So, should you upgrade your iPhone in 2024? I have the iPhone 16 Pro Max here, and seemingly there's not a lot of updates, but now that I've been using it, there's a lot of small iterative updates that on paper might not seem like much, but when they're all combined into this package, they can start to seem meaningful. First, new color. This is called Titanium Desert. It's essentially just the gold that they've had before. But overall, though, build and design are essentially identical. The only physical difference, other than the dimensions that I was able to find on the 15 Pro Max, the titanium is brushed, while on the 16 Pro series, it's more smoothed out and maybe a little bit more lustrous and shiny. Very, very subtle. When I was in the Apple store, I put both of the natural titaniums next to each other, and I quite frankly couldn't really tell the difference. But at the end of the day, though, everyone's going to be putting a case on their phone. I was sent some cases from Benks. I'm going to leave links down below to check them out. I don't benefit by you using these links. I love these Kevlar cases. I buy one every year. Thanks to Benks, I don't have to do that this time. And so they sent me two cases. This one's their montage art case, and the gold against the black to me looks really, really sophisticated. Love the way this looks. This one's a bit thicker though, so I'm not into thicker cases. Usually I would buy a Pitaka case every year or a later case, but I find the Benks case, at least this Kevlar one, to be on par with those. And with their thin Kevlar case, it does a good job of maintaining the really thin bezels on the phone. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just really happy that they sent me this case. But other than that, though, you're getting slimmer bezels compared to last year, and it's fairly subtle. I almost don't think I'd be able to tell the difference unless they were side by side. But now the screen is actually bigger on the 16 Pro Max, and that I did notice. Just using different apps and just navigating throughout this phone, I guess having the smaller bezels on top of having a larger screen makes the overall feel in the hand not that different, where I'm able to navigate just as comfortably even though this is a 6.9 inch screen versus 6.8. And you do get a little bit of extra screen real estate, so take a look at the Mail app. There's more screen real estate on the 16 Pro Max where I'm able to see a little bit more text compared to the 15 Pro. It doesn't seem like much when you're looking at it on screen, but using it all day, it was definitely evident, and I felt a lot more comfortable using it. And also, which you've probably heard billions of times from other videos that you may have seen, is the new camera control button. And yes, it is a physical button. You can't see it being pressed down, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But other than that, there's not really much else, at least when you're looking at this phone from the outside. The biggest improvement, though, is this new A18 Pro chip. They're on a 3nm process versus 4 last year, and instead of me getting all nerdy about what that means, usually that means better performance while using less power. And this chip is no exception. So what I did with this test was I did the stress test, which runs the same benchmark 20 times, and this stresses the GPU to the max. So if you take a look at this chart, not only is the 16 Pro Max performing 31% better than the 15 Pro Max, but it's not thermal throttling as you start to see with the 15 Pro Max. And I've heard a lot of complaints from people with the iPhone 15 Pro Max where it'll just randomly start to heat up, or when you're recording long video, the phone will either shut down or the screen will dim to a point where you could barely see it. And the entire experience on the phone just becomes slow and choppy. And same when playing games. I got a lot of comments on my previous iPhone 15 video that people trying to game playing the new Assassin's Creed, the new Resident Evil, for 30 minutes or longer, the frame rates would just start to dip. The 15 Pro Max did start to thermal throttle a lot towards the end of the test. And when the test ended, it started going down even more. With the 16 Pro Max, not only is the performance 30% faster, but after that initial first dip, the performance is stable throughout. So that potentially could be a reason to upgrade for you if you've had overheating and slowdown issues with your previous iPhone, if you're pushing it to the limits. Sometimes if you're at a concert, if you want to record the entire show, or if you have kids and you want to record their game or the recitals, etc., The 16 Pro series will allow you to do that, and you won't have to worry about the phone shutting down or overheating. But if you don't game or record long videos, then it's so far seemingly is not worth the upgrade. I did some more tests on the GPU, and I'm getting consistently 31% improvement over last year. And I think that's how they're able to get 4K 120 FPS without any video degradation compared to shooting at 30 FPS. There are other Android phones out there that can do 4K 120, but the quality and the autofocus takes a big dip. This, from what I was able to tell, performs just as well as if you were recording 4K at 24 or 30 FPS. A lot of horsepower is required to do that, and the A18 Pro does deliver on that. So next I want to talk about this new camera button, and I know a lot of other YouTubers have been talking about this button, and you're probably sick about hearing about it, but I want to give you my opinions on it. I've seen some mixed reviews on it, and I kind of like it in some ways. I always prefer having a dedicated button. On the 15 Pro Max, I used to just use the action button to launch the camera. Now I'm able to get that button back so I can use it to change to ring, silent, and vibrate, etc. I find it to be very convenient to be on the bottom right of the phone where my thumb just naturally rests if I want to open up the camera, and to me it just works every time. I've heard some people complain that it's a little bit stiff to press, and when you press it, you can end up pushing your phone down a little bit, messing up your composition. I haven't had that issue. I mean, I'm used to using real cameras, so I'm always holding my phone like this when I'm taking pictures for extra stability, so I haven't had that issue at all. So, and I get it, if you're a lefty, having this button on the right may not work well for you if you use the left hand, but I'm a lefty and I prefer the shutter button to be on the right side, but that's how every single camera is designed. There's no lefty cameras, and us lefties, we're fairly adaptable, so I don't think that's a valid criticism. So this is the part that I've seen a lot of videos on the actual controls itself, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me, so let me try to break it down for you guys if you are like that. So you press the camera button once to launch the camera, and then you press it to take a picture. Or you could also press and hold it to take a video. But if you press it down gently, it'll bring up the controls. And this part isn't actually a button press. It's simulated with a haptic engine. And when you gently press, you can swipe to the left or right to control the different settings. This is set to the exposure. And if you want to change it, you double tap it, and you can slide through the different settings that's available. You can adjust the aperture. It's not optical aperture, it's just software based. You can adjust the zoom. I wish I could kind of disable some of these to make it easier to get to the ones that I want to get to. Honestly, the only ones I would want to use is the exposure and the styles. So let's look into the styles a little bit, because it's actually a bit confusing, and I didn't really understand how it worked until I got this phone. So there are different styles. Standard means default. It's how the camera comes out the box, and that's probably how most people will use their phone. But as you start swiping to the left, there's a whole bunch of different, essentially they're filters, but they're more than that. Usually with filters, they're destructive. Once you apply the filter, you can't really go back. Since I believe the iPhone 16 Pro is using JPEG lossless or JPEG XL, a lot of the raw data is baked into the metadata of the photo. And the good thing about that compared to raw is when you share it, it's viewable to the other user. You don't have to edit it and then export it. So it's a great format. I'm assuming this is how they're able to adjust all these styles even after you take the photo. But anyway, and then there's also the tone. So what the tone does, if you swipe more to the left, it increases the contrast, or it kills some of the shadows. But then as you increase to the right, it brings up the highlights. So with the combination of these, you can start to create your own look in the photos. And one thing that's really cool, and I think this is where that 31% GPU improvement is really paying off, is the way that they're able to process this live on camera, and also it remains sensitive to skin tones, so your iPhone is able to detect the scene and detect when there are subjects and when they're human subjects. So as you can see, as I'm going through these different settings, look at the skin tones here. They are remaining natural. When us pros do our color grading or when we edit photos like in Lightroom, etc. It takes us a long time to find a good edit without making skin tones look like we're from another planet or something. The fact that Apple is able to do this right into the phone without any thought from us, the user, is unlike something I've ever seen before. So it's not a gimmick. There's a chance that a lot of people won't use it, won't want to spend the time to understand it or learn it, and I completely understand that. But for those who do want that, I think this is a great feature. And one of the reasons why I don't use iPhone as my main camera phone is because it just has a very distinct look. And since iPhones are so popular, everyone's photos and videos kind of look the same. That's why I've been really enjoying the Pixel 9 Pro, because the photos and video is amazing right out of the camera, and the Pixel has its own unique look to it. Now with this, you can create your own look if you wanted to spend the time to do it. But here's the thing though, I don't know if you need this camera button because everything is available to you in the actual touchscreen itself. So if I wanted to mess around with the different tones, honestly, it might just be a little bit easier to use the touchscreen and just scroll around to the different modes. And you get additional controls with this pad here. And the way this pad works, from what I've noticed, is all the way to the left reduces the saturation. All the way to the right increases the saturation, and you can bring it up and down to adjust the shadows and the highlights, etc. That's kind of how that works. And you have some controls here for the white balance controls here with this slider. So I'm almost inclined to believe that it's easier to use the touchscreen versus using the camera controls, but I do like it for launching the camera and taking pictures. So overall, I took several pictures today and compared them to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and for the most part, there's not much of a difference. I think there's some smoother gradients, colors look more natural, but it's incredibly subtle. I could just be making this up just because I'm excited to get a new iPhone. I gotta spend more time with it, but if you were to just quickly look at a picture from the 15 Pro Max or from the 16 Pro Max, you probably will not be able to tell the difference. I don't know, at the end of the day, this is a very iterative update. This would have been better suited as like the S series. This could have been the iPhone 15s Pro series, which they stopped doing a long time ago. They improved the performance, which a lot of people complained about last year. They've added a camera button and a larger screen. Those might be enough for you, and if it is, I mean, it is for me. I'm almost starting to think about switching out of my Pixel to this phone. I've been really enjoying using it. Probably because I haven't used iOS all year and this just seems fresh to me. I'll see how it goes long term, but my favorite phone to use right now is the Pixel 9 Pro XL. My only issue with it is the Tensor G4 is a little bit underpowered when you really push this phone to its limits. So I don't know which phone I'm going to end up keeping for the rest of the year. That's just the first look of the iPhone 16 Pro. This is not a review. I will maybe come back with a full review on it if I end up coming up with anything that's very interesting to find that I haven't mentioned in this first look. So if you guys like this video, like it. If you want to see more, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks guys, bye.